When you go to that place, when you do the meditation, and when you make what we call conscious contact with your higher self and with God, when you make that conscious contact, you shift from a belief in God or a knowing about God to knowing God. There's a very big difference between knowing about God and knowing God. Knowing about God is a belief. Knowing God is conscious contact. It's direct inner knowing. And so you make this inner contact and you have a certainty about what it is that you want to manifest. And that desire that you have is consistent with all 9 of these principles. That it is based on unconditional love, and it's based on the power of attraction, and it's based on your higher awareness, and it's based on generosity and service and kindness. And then you are absolutely certain. And then you're able to detach because you're not really concerned about how it's going to show up. You see, your job in this whole business of manifesting, your job is not to say how and when. Your job is to say yes. Just yes. And then you let the how and the when take over. Now, when I say this, I know immediately what the ego part of us starts to think. I want it now, but I have to have it this way. But if I don't get it pretty soon, then I'm going to go broke. And then if this doesn't show up over here, then I'm going to have to go on welfare. And if I have to go on welfare, then and your mind starts playing all of these games about how terrible things are going to be if the person that you want to manifest doesn't show up the way you want him to show up, or if the child that you expect to have isn't showing up on time, or if the finances, or if the job, or whatever. And there's this push and this anxiety and this stress, which is based on fear and based on distrust. But you know, when you have this knowing, as it says in the Course, when you have this certainty, great things have no fear of time. You see, the universal intelligence doesn't operate in the parameters of time. Time is just our way of carving up the oneness. I was reading a story of Einstein as a young boy. And one of the things it said about young Einstein is that when he was a little boy, he picked up a compass. And when he picked up this compass, he noticed that there was something that would move the needle. But he couldn't find anything in the compass that was moving the needle. And he was intrigued by what it was that would move the needle. And he would go and turn in a certain way. He'd make a 90-degree turn, and the needle would turn and face whatever direction it was that he was facing. And yet, he hadn't done anything. And he was intrigued by what this force was, inside or outside, or what it was, that allowed this, what would make this needle move? That force, that universal intelligence, that thing that is nameless, that thing that we can't identify in the physical world, is the provider of all of the things that will manifest to you in the physical world. And it is also the source of your life. So that when you have an alignment with that force, what happens is you get very, very peaceful. And when you get peaceful, you stop insisting. You just know. You just know that it's going to show up. And you're not demanding. You're not looking under the leaves for it. You're not asking for any favors. In fact, you understand that this universal force cannot provide special favors because it is everywhere. And if it were just for you and not for someone else, that would immediately make it not a universal force. It would be now someplace that it isn't. There's no favoritism in this. There's just this positive, absolute, unconditionally loving, knowing force in the universe that holds everything together that you come to honor, to respect, to know. And you know, it's really like changing around your perspective in life. It's like walking a new path. And it's the story of manifesting. Being able to manifest your heart's desire, to align yourself and your intentions with this divine organizing intelligence that is limitless, that is inexhaustible, that is ever expanding, that is abundant, that is all providing and all knowing and everywhere at the same time, is like walking down another street. To align yourself with that and to know that that alignment in itself is enough to bring whatever it is that has particularized, that is individualized into the world that you would like to have show up in your life and align with the particularization of that divine intelligence that is you. That it's just bringing it all together. It's just a realignment. And it will cooperate with you. The thing that will keep it from working for you is any obstacle to that flow. As I talked about when I was speaking about unconditional love. The minute that you put hatred, anger, bitterness, tension, anxiety, stress in the way of that intelligence, between you and that intelligence, you block that flow. It is a flowing. That's why we use water as a symbol of it.
Many of our greatest thinkers have spoken about the power of imagination. William Blake said that what is now proved was once only imagined. Now think about the importance of that. If you want to have something show up in your life, the kind of person you would like to become, manifest something new into your life, something powerful, whatever it might be, you obviously must first be able to imagine it. Your imagination. This is yours and yours alone. You can place anything into your imagination that you want to place there. Independent of what anybody else says about it, independent of what your senses tell you, independent of all the evidence that may be to the contrary, you can place into your imagination an I am that represents what you would like to attract into your life and make it come into fruition. Einstein's most famous quote, one of his most famous observations, he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Placing these I ams into your imagination, I had some of you I'm sure know about it because it's been all over the papers and so on, a diagnosis of leukemia a couple of years ago. And for a while, I kind of began to believe some of the things that were being told to me about what happens when you have this particular kind of leukemia. And I have instead, in the last year or so, had some of the most amazing, astonishing things happen into my life, where I have felt I was just so alive and so strengthened and so fully connected to my source, knowing. I mean, basically, I have a knowing in here that life itself is a sexually transmitted terminal disease, okay? I mean, that's basically the fact, all right? So I'm not saying that all you have to do is put into your imagination an I am that says I am, and you're going to live forever. That isn't, but every moment that you do have until you are called can be a moment of exquisite, extraordinary power living from that place. And that's the decision that I made. I have never felt so powerful as I have the last several years, since I recognized the power that I have in my imagination to place something there and live from it. Einstein once said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want your children to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. It's one of the reasons I've taken to writing children's books, to give children an opportunity to explore that thing called their imagination from the time that they're just little boys and little girls. And what I have in my imagination is a do not disturb sign. And it's like mentally inside, I've placed that in there. I do not anyone to disturb or try to change around anything that I have placed in there about what is possible for me. So you never want to place into your imagination any thought that you would not want to materialize. You never want to allow in your imagination to be contaminated by the way life used to be. Your imagination is yours. Don't let any other people influence you. Never allow people's ideas about what is possible or impossible for you to occupy your imagination. I've called it, throughout my life, I've called it being a scurvy elephant. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was living in a foster home out in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and I came home from school and I talked to Mrs. Scarf, and I said, Mrs. Scarf, what's a scurvy elephant? And she said, where did you hear that? And I said, I don't know, Mrs. Poole, my 3rd grade teacher, was talking to the principal, Mrs. Smith, and she said Wayne Dyer was in his classroom and called me a scurvy elephant. So she got on the phone and she called up and the principal said, oh, that's Wayne. He gets everything mixed up. She didn't say that he was a scurvy elephant in her classroom. She said that he was a disturbing element in her classroom. A disturbing element is someone who has in their imagination the possibility that they can do anything, that all things are possible. Again, it's one of those great lines from the New Testament. With God, all things are possible. Now you tell me, what does that leave out? What does all things are possible leave out? That doesn't leave out the possibility that we can defy gravity, that we can soar, that we can heal ourselves, that we can create magnificent prosperity in our life, that we can change the world. We're placing into our imagination a world that we want to live in that has no limitations and that is based on living from a place of love and kindness and God consciousness and spiritual awareness, divine mind at work. I believe it's possible. Collectively, if enough of us begin to believe that we can create that kind of a world, if public television can put on these kinds of programs, which is why I am a part of public television, because this is what they broadcast. This is what comes into our homes. The energy of all things are possible, not the energy of violence and hatred and, and all of the silly stuff that you see so frequently on commercial and cable television, especially the violence and especially the rude communication between young children and their parents and so on. You don't see that here. It's why I'm here raising money for this station and all public television stations. Einstein, once again, this man of imagination, said logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere.